IPRA next request.
Chair Waits, Honorable Board, this is an issue that has been requested from the City Clerk's office, and it has to do with how the CPOA and the POB are going to, moving forward, handle the voluminous amounts of IPRA requests that the agency and the board receives from members of the public. Both Director Harness and I have met with the attorneys at the city to talk about the way in which this process could happen so that the agency and the board maintain their autonomy and the fact that they have separate counsel, while at the same time streamlining the process through an infrastructure that's called Next Request. I'm not sure if anyone on the board has had a chance to send an IPRA request to the city or another municipality in the state, but it is an electronic database that is utilized by the city clerk's office here in Albuquerque to ensure that the right folks get the right IPRA request in the right amount of time, because there are very short deadlines associated with IPRA. There is a 3-day acknowledgement deadline that within that 3 days, if the documents are easily accessible, the agency or the board is supposed to produce those documents. There's also a 15-day deadline. And because a lot of the requests that are coming into the POB and the CPOA are dual agency requests with impacting APD and other agencies at the city, what the city clerk's office has asked the POB to consider is a proposal whereby the CPOA and the POB would be part of Next Request. That would entail Director Harness and anyone else that the CPOA would like access to be involved in the electronic process whereby a member of the public submits a request. It then gets tracked through this system so that everyone involved can see who's dealing with it, where it is in the process, and when the matter has been either addressed, closed, or if it remains open. Part of the issue with that, however, is the fact that the CPOA and the POB are independent from the city. And so what you have been presented with is the proposed way in which you all maintain the independence necessary pursuant to the ordinance, but at the same time are able to use the resources that Next Request provides. The hope is that by allowing Director Harness, who is the CPOA's record custodian, to utilize Next Request, that it will make the process cleaner and faster for the public as well as the agency. It will also help create an open line of communication between APD for those dual requests that come in, as well as other agencies. What the city has proposed and that I've looked at that you all have is something called a joint defense agreement. The reason that is necessary, at least in my opinion, is because you do have separate counsel, and if your counsel is working with the city, we don't want to waive privilege on any items that may be subject to attorney-client privilege that are exempted from IPRA. What the joint defense agreement provides is that by the CPOA and the POB having those communications with the city attorneys involved in the IPRA issues, that wouldn't constitute a waiver of your attorney-client privilege. To determine whether there are exempted documents that are being requested or any other issues that may arise in the IPRA scenario. So what the agreement is supposed to do, and if the board has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, is to maintain that attorney-client privilege without creating a waiver, but at the same time also maintaining your independence, that if there is a question about whether something should be exempted or not, that you're not deferring to city legal alone, that they will coordinate with your attorneys to ensure that everyone is on the same page about those exemptions or those productions. Also included in your packet is a workflow document to help kind of understand what Next Request actually looks like and how the process happens. I believe this is all information that's available in the city clerk's office, but what it provides is what happens from the receipt of a records request through the production of responsive documents. And I'm looking at this and it's very small and it's in white, but it provides how the process happens for those requests and when legal gets involved and when they do not, and when exemptions occur and when they do not, and when redactions need to happen for things like personal identifying information. There's certain requirements pursuant to the statute that personal identifying information be redacted. but that the public is entitled to receive a lot of the other information. In short, what this proposal is to allow the CPOA and the POB to utilize Next Request to keep track of IPRA requests the way that the city does, while maintaining autonomy that you all have through the ordinance for independence, and not waiving attorney-client privilege when or if those types of questions arise with regard to IPRA requests.
Okay. Who actually does the redactions? Who does that?
Chair Waits, it will depend on whether it is a dual request or if it's simply an agency request that comes directly to the CPOA. In the instance that it's a request for documents solely within the possession of the CPOA, I believe that that's something Director Harness has been doing and likely will continue to do for purposes of IPRA responses. If it's information coming from APD, I believe that's something that APD has been doing. And would continue to under this process. It simply would mean that everyone is in the same database, understanding who is doing what and when.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Good job.
Yes. And Chair Waits, if this is something that the board is inclined to take a vote on, I have indicated that the board was going to hear it on their agenda tonight and that I would get back to the city clerk with a decision, whatever it is that the board has on this topic. And to be clear, the board can decide to not use Next Request. It can decide to use Next Request pursuant to this joint defense agreement, and it can choose to take more time to discuss the topic.
At one point, I feel as though you were a little worried about venturing into Next Request. Does that concern remain?
Chair Waits and Vice Chair Galloway, yes. With this joint defense agreement that would be executed by my office on behalf of the CPOA and the POB and the city that would maintain that attorney-client privilege, that was the main concern, is that we would not want to be waiving attorney-client privilege unnecessarily by utilizing Next Request. And that's not the intent. The intent is to make it so that the documents are more easily accessible to the public quicker.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Director Harness's opinion on this.
Chair Waits, Member St. John. From the standpoint of the CPOA, I would welcome the assistance of being in the system for tracking. That would be one less internal tracking that I would have to do. And then instead of me having to email 2 or 3 different agencies to find out what the status is, I would be able to access the request, and I could see all of the parties that have touched the request, and if in fact they've met the request. So I am in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Just a typo on here on the second line, Police Oversight Board.
You found the same.
I'm going to make a motion that we adopt this new procedure, buy into Next Request, with the caveat of what is laid out in the joint defense agreement. That's my motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motion and second by majority vote.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank
Thank
you.
you for your work on that, Tina.
It has passed. Unanimously? I thought I said that. Thank you. Okay.